The morning sun hadn't yet burned through the October fog when Maya Redfeather parked her silver sedan outside the weathered community center on the Lakota Pine Ridge Reservation in South Dakota. She checked her reflection in the rearview mirror, adjusting the collar of her blazer, practiced corporate smile firmly in place. 28 years old, MBA from Northwestern, 3 years climbing the ladder at a Chicago consulting firm. She looked the part of success. But looking the part and feeling it were two different things entirely. Her grandmother's voice crackled through her phone for the third time that week. "Maya, your cousin Emma's naming ceremony is in 2 months. The family expects you here. This isn't optional." Maya had deleted the message without responding, just like the previous two. Naming ceremonies. The phrase alone made her uncomfortable, dragging up memories of childhood visits to the reservation, feeling caught between two worlds, belonging fully to neither. Her mother had left this place at 18, never looking back, raising Maya in suburban Milwaukee with barely a mention of their heritage except when absolutely necessary. "I'm Maya Redfeather on paper," she told her college roommate once, "but I've never felt like I knew what that actually meant." The community center smelled of sage and coffee, an odd combination that immediately transported her back to those childhood summers. She'd driven 5 hours from Chicago after her boss had suggested, in that tone that meant it wasn't really a suggestion, that she take some personal time. The account she'd been managing for 9 months had gone to someone else, someone who fit the client's vision better. The rejection stung less than the familiarity of it. Inside, folding chairs were arranged in a circle. About 20 people, mostly elders, sat waiting. Her grandmother, Sarah Redfeather, stood near the front, her silver hair braided down her back, wearing a traditional ribbon dress that seemed to glow in the dim light filtering through the windows. At 73, she moved with the steady confidence of someone who knew exactly who she was and where she belonged. "You came," Sarah said simply, embracing her granddaughter. No judgment in her voice, just fact. "I needed to get out of Chicago for a bit," Maya admitted. Sarah's eyes held understanding that Maya found both comforting and unsettling. "You're here for Emma's ceremony planning? I don't really know anything about it." "Then it's time you learned." Sarah gestured to an empty chair. "Sit. Listen." The meeting was already in progress. Emma's mother, Maya's Aunt Patricia, was explaining the preparations needed. Emma was 7, about to receive her spirit name in the traditional Lakota way. Maya had only vague memories of her own naming ceremony, conducted when she was 4. Her mother had taken her back to Milwaukee the next day, and they'd never spoken of it again. "The name isn't just words," an elder named Thomas Crow was saying, his weathered hands moving expressively. "It's identity. It's connection to ancestors, to the land, to the people. Without it, we're adrift. With it, we know our place in the Great Circle." Maya shifted in her chair. The corporate world had taught her that identity was what you made it, what you achieved, what you could put on a resume. This talk of spirit names and ancestral connections felt foreign, almost threatening to the carefully constructed life she'd built. But something in Thomas's words resonated in a place she'd been trying to ignore. That hollow feeling that had been growing despite every professional success, every promotion, every milestone that should have felt like enough, but somehow didn't. After the meeting, Sarah invited Maya to stay at her small house on the edge of the reservation. The offer was casual, but Maya caught the hope underneath it. "Just for a few days," Maya heard herself saying. "I should be back in Chicago by Monday." Sarah smiled knowingly. "Of course. Just a few days." That night, unpacking her overnight bag in her grandmother's guest room, Maya found an old photograph tucked into the dresser mirror. She recognized herself as a small child, maybe 4 years old, wearing a white doeskin dress, standing between her grandmother and her mother, all 3 generations together. Her mother was smiling in a way Maya hadn't seen in years, maybe ever. She'd always thought her mother's departure from the reservation was about escaping something. Looking at this photo, Maya wondered for the first time if maybe her mother had been running from herself. Her phone buzzed, email from her boss. "Taking you off the Morrison account permanently. We'll discuss your role when you return." Maya sat on the edge of the bed, the photograph still in her hand, and felt the careful walls she'd built beginning to crack. She'd spent years proving she belonged in that corporate world, and it had taken them less than a week to show her she'd been wrong. "Who am I?" she whispered to the empty room, the question escaping before she could stop it. The photograph offered no answers, but in her grandmother's house, surrounded by the quiet sounds of the reservation at night, Maya felt something shift. Maybe she'd been asking the wrong question all along. Maybe the question wasn't who she was, but who she'd always been, underneath all the layers she'd built up trying to belong somewhere else. Check if you are already subscribed to this channel, because you're about to discover stories that will change the way you see identity, heritage, and the profound power of knowing exactly who you are meant to be. Sarah was already awake when Maya emerged from the guest room at 6:30, the smell of fry bread and coffee filling the small kitchen. Through the window, the South Dakota plains stretched endlessly, painted in shades of amber and rust by the early autumn light. "Your mother loved mornings like this," Sarah said without turning from the stove. "She'd sit right where you're sitting, watching the sun come up, asking me questions about everything." Maya accepted the coffee her grandmother offered, wrapping her hands around the warm mug. "She never talks about any of that now." "No, I suppose she wouldn't." Sarah set a plate of fry bread and eggs in front of her. Running from something and running towards something can look the same from the outside, but inside you always know which one you're doing. They ate in comfortable silence for a while before Sarah spoke again. "Thomas Crow is leading a workshop this morning about naming ceremonies, teaching the younger generation how to conduct them properly. You should come." Maya's first instinct was to refuse, to make up an excuse about emails to check or calls to make. But her inbox had been suspiciously quiet since yesterday, and the truth was, she had nowhere else to be. "Okay," she said. The workshop was held in a larger room at the community center. About 15 people gathered, ranging from teenagers to elders. Thomas stood at the front, his presence commanding despite his 70-plus years. "Names in our tradition aren't labels," he began, his voice carrying a rhythmic quality that reminded Maya of storytelling. "They're maps. They tell us where we came from, what we're meant to bring to the people, how we fit into the web of relationships that makes us who we are." He gestured to a young woman in the front row. "Tell me your English name and what it means." "Jennifer Martinez. It doesn't really mean anything. My mom just liked it." Thomas nodded. "And does it tell you anything about your path, your purpose, your connection to those who came before?" Jennifer shook her head. "Now you all know Jennifer's spirit name, given at her ceremony 12 years ago, speaks with thunder. Given because when she was a baby, she cried through an entire thunderstorm as if she was talking to the sky itself." He smiled. "That name told us something, that she would have a powerful voice, that she would speak truths people needed to hear, even when those truths were uncomfortable." Maya glanced at Jennifer, who she now recognized as one of the teenagers she'd seen around the reservation. The girl sat straighter, a quiet pride in her expression. "Jennifer is studying law at the University of South Dakota now," Thomas continued, "fighting for water rights for our people, speaking with thunder against those who would take what little we have left." He paused. "See how the name was a prophecy? Not magic, not supernatural, just observation by those who had lived long enough to recognize patterns, to see in a child what that child would need to become." For the next 2 hours, Thomas walked them through the process, how elders observed children, looking for signs of temperament and character, how they consulted with family, with other elders, weaving together a name that would both describe and guide, how the ceremony itself was designed to anchor that identity, to make it real not just for the child but for the entire community. "The community holds the name," Thomas explained. "When everyone knows you as Speaks with Thunder, you can't run from that identity. It's not just yours to accept or reject. It's theirs too. It's accountability and belonging wrapped together." Maya felt something tight in her chest. Her own name, given at 4 and never used again, suddenly felt like a missing piece she hadn't known she'd lost. During a break, she approached Thomas. "My name," she started, then stopped, unsure how to continue. "Morning Dove," Thomas said gently, "because you were born at dawn, and your grandmother said you made soft cooing sounds, like a dove greeting the sunrise." a peaceful presence bringing calm to chaos. Maya felt tears prick her eyes, unexpected and unwelcome. I don't feel peaceful. I don't feel calm. Perhaps because you've been trying to be someone else. Thomas placed a weathered hand on her shoulder. A dove trying to be a hawk will only exhaust itself, but a dove being fully a dove, that's where the real power lives. That afternoon, Sarah took Maya to meet with Emma and Patricia. The 7-year-old was vibrating with excitement about her upcoming ceremony, asking questions faster than anyone could answer them. "Will I get a new name right away?" Emma asked. "The elders are still watching, still deciding," Patricia explained patiently. "They'll choose the name that fits who you are and who you're becoming." Emma turned to Maya with the unfiltered curiosity of childhood. "What's your name? Your real name?" "Maya," she answered automatically. "No, your Indian name. Grandma Sarah says everyone has one." Patricia shot her daughter a look, but Maya found herself answering, "Morning Dove." "That's pretty. Why don't you use it?" Such a simple question, such a complicated answer. Because using it meant claiming an identity she'd spent years trying to leave behind. Because it connected her to a community she'd never felt fully part of. Because names had power, and she'd been afraid of what that power might demand of her. "I guess I forgot it for a while," Maya finally said. Emma looked at her with the serious expression children sometimes get when they understand more than adults give them credit for. "You should remember. Otherwise, how do you know who you are?" That evening, Maya sat on her grandmother's porch as the sun set, painting the sky in impossible colors. Sarah joined her, bringing 2 cups of tea. "Your mother's name was Laughing Water," Sarah said quietly, given because she giggled at everything as a baby, bringing joy wherever she went. "What happened to her?" Maya asked. "Why did she leave?" Sarah was quiet for a long moment. "Your grandfather died when your mother was 16, car accident on Highway 18. She blamed this place, blamed our traditions, blamed everything, including herself. Thought if she could just get far enough away, she could outrun the grief." Sarah sipped her tea. "But grief doesn't work that way. Neither does identity. You can change your name, change your address, change everything visible, but what's inside, what you're made of, that goes with you." "Did she ever find peace?" "You know her better than I do now," Sarah said sadly. "Does she seem at peace to you?" Maya thought of her mother, perpetually stressed, perpetually unsatisfied, always moving toward the next thing that might finally fill whatever emptiness drove her. No, she doesn't. Names aren't magic, Maya, but they're mirrors. They reflect back to us who we really are beneath all the things we pretend to be. Sarah set down her tea and took her granddaughter's hand. "Morning, Dove. It suits you, you know. Even now, even after everything, there's a gentleness about you, a desire for peace. You bring calm to storms without even realizing it." Maya felt something break open inside her, tears finally spilling over. "I don't know how to be her. Morning Dove. I've spent so long being Maya Redfeather, corporate consultant, climbing the ladder, proving I belong in their world. And has it made you happy?" The question hung in the darkening air. Maya didn't need to answer. They both already knew. The next week unfolded in a rhythm entirely different from Maya's Chicago life. She found herself waking with the sun, helping Sarah with small tasks around the house, attending more community meetings about Emma's ceremony. The reservation had its problems, visible everywhere she looked: poverty, addiction, unemployment. The scars of historical trauma still raw and unhealed, but it also had something her corporate world lacked entirely: genuine connection. People here knew each other's stories. When someone spoke, others listened with full attention, not just waiting for their turn to talk. Disagreements happened, sometimes heated, but they were resolved through conversation and counsel, not passive-aggressive emails and territorial posturing. Thomas Crow had taken an interest in Maya's journey, inviting her to shadow him as he worked with other young people preparing for their own ceremonies. She watched him with a teenager named Marcus, whose parents were debating whether to give him a traditional naming at 15, much later than usual. "It's never too late," Thomas assured them. "Some people receive their names as infants, others as children. Some not until they're adults and have already walked a long road. The name comes when the person is ready to receive it, when the community can see clearly who they are. Marcus was quiet, thoughtful, clearly wrestling with the decision. Finally, he asked, "What if the name doesn't fit? What if I don't want to be what it says I am?" Thomas smiled. "The name describes truth, not preference. It's observation, not assignment. If it doesn't fit, that means either we've observed wrong, which is rare but possible, or you're not seeing yourself clearly yet. How do I know which one it is? You ask yourself, am I running toward who I want to become or running from who I actually am?" Thomas's eyes were kind, but direct. One of those paths leads to growth, the other leads to exhaustion. The words struck Maya like a physical blow. How much of her life had been running from rather than toward? Every achievement, every promotion, every carefully curated aspect of her professional persona, were they about becoming someone or about not being someone else? After the meeting, she found herself walking the paths of the reservation thinking. The October air was crisp, carrying hints of the winter to come. She passed the elementary school where Emma attended class, the health clinic where Sarah volunteered once a week, the small Catholic church that somehow coexisted with the traditional spiritual practices without either one erasing the other. Her phone buzzed. A text from her colleague Derek. "Heard about Morrison, that's rough. Politics, not performance. You know that, right?" Did she? Or had she always suspected that no matter how hard she worked, how perfectly she performed, there would always be some reason she didn't quite fit? Not native enough for the reservation, not white enough for the corporate world, forever in between. She'd built her entire identity around that corporate success, measuring her worth in client wins and performance reviews. Now, with that foundation cracking, what was left? That evening, Sarah hosted a gathering of elder women, including Patricia and 3 others Maya vaguely remembered from childhood visits. They sat in Sarah's living room, working on beadwork for Emma's ceremony dress, their hands moving with practiced ease as they talked. "Maya, come sit," Sarah called. "Help us with this." Maya had 0 beading experience, but she took a seat and accepted the materials one of the women handed her. "I'll probably just mess it up." "Then you'll learn by messing up," the woman said with a shrug. "I'm Doris, by the way, Doris Tallbear. I was there for your naming ceremony. You cried the whole time until they brought you outside and showed you the sunrise. Then you went quiet, just watching the sky turn colors." The women laughed, sharing similar stories of ceremonies past, weaving together a tapestry of memory and community that Maya found herself drawn into despite her initial reluctance. As they worked, Patricia asked Maya about her life in Chicago. Maya found herself describing it, but the words felt hollow even as she spoke them. The apartment she barely spent time in, the colleagues she socialized with but didn't actually know, the boyfriend she'd dated for 8 months before realizing they'd never had a single conversation about anything that actually mattered. "Sounds lonely," Doris observed, not unkindly. It was lonely. Maya hadn't let herself acknowledge it until this moment, but Doris was absolutely right. She'd been surrounded by people for years while feeling utterly alone. "Your name," Patricia said carefully. "Morning Dove. Do you understand what it means? Not just the words, but the meaning underneath." Maya shook her head. "Doves mate for life," Patricia explained. "They're loyal. They return to the same nesting places year after year. They don't wander far from home." She paused, her hands still moving across the beadwork. "Your name was telling you something, that you're someone who needs roots, who needs home, who needs to belong somewhere real, not just somewhere convenient." The words settled over Maya like a blanket, both comforting and challenging. She'd spent so much energy trying to be flexible, mobile, ready to relocate for the next opportunity. She'd prided herself on not being tied down. But what if that wasn't freedom? What if it was just another form of running? Sarah spoke up quietly. "When you were little, before your mother took you away, you used to sit with me on the porch every morning and watch the birds. You could identify every species, knew all their calls. You'd get so excited when the doves came back each spring, remembering them from the year before." She smiled at the memory. "You said they were coming home. Even then, you understood what that meant." Maya felt tears threatening again. "I don't know how to come home. I don't even know where home is anymore." "Home isn't a location," Doris said firmly. It's knowing who your people are, who you are among them. Your name tells you that. Morning dove, you bring peace. You create home wherever you are for yourself and others. That's your gift. But you can't give it to others until you claim it for yourself. The evening continued, the women talking and working, occasionally guiding Maya's clumsy attempts at beading. Their conversation ranged from the sacred to the mundane, no hard line between them. They discussed Emma's ceremony and also someone's trouble with their water heater. They shared wisdom about traditional practices and also traded recipes and gossip about a scandal involving the tribal council. This, Maya realized, was what she'd been missing. Not the beading or the specific cultural practices, but this sense of being woven into something larger than herself, of being known, fully known, and accepted anyway. If you're feeling what Maya is feeling right now, that deep recognition of something missing in your own life, type in the comments, "I'm coming home to myself." Let this community know you're on this journey too, because none of us should walk it alone. Maya's few days at the reservation stretched into 2 weeks, then 3. She'd emailed her boss about taking an extended leave, half expecting to be fired outright. Instead, she got a surprisingly human response. "Take the time you need. Your position will be here when you're ready. If you're ready." That last phrase stuck with her. If you're ready. As if her boss somehow knew she was wrestling with something bigger than just work stress, she'd started attending Thomas Crow's teachings regularly, sitting in circles with teenagers and young adults, all of them grappling with questions of identity and belonging. One morning, Thomas posed a question to the group. What does it mean to truly be seen? A young man named Robert spoke up first. Like on social media? Having lots of followers? Thomas shook his head slowly. Being looked at isn't the same as being seen. I'm talking about someone knowing you so well they can speak your truth, even when you're trying to hide from it yourself. The circle went quiet. Maya felt the weight of the question pressing on her chest. It's terrifying, Thomas continued, to be truly seen. Because once you are, you can't pretend anymore. You can't wear masks. You can't hide behind achievements or status or any of the armor we build. He paused, looking around the circle. But it's also the only way to be fully alive, to be fully yourself. After the session, Maya walked to the small library on the reservation, a modest building with more character than books. She'd been avoiding calling her mother, but the conversation with Doris and the other women had left her with questions only her mother could answer. She dialed, expecting voicemail. Her mother picked up on the second ring. "Maya, is everything okay?" The worry in her mother's voice was immediate and familiar. "I'm fine, Mom. I'm still at Grandma's." "On the reservation." A long silence, then, "Oh, just that, oh." A world of history in a single syllable. "Mum, I need to ask you something about your name. Laughing Water." "That's not my name. That was never my name." The response was sharp, defensive. "It was given to you in ceremony, by the elders, by your community." "A community I left for a reason, Maya. A community that couldn't save my father, couldn't save itself from poverty and despair. I wanted more for you. I wanted you to have choices, opportunities, a real future. And I'm grateful for that," Maya said carefully. "But Mom, did you ever ask yourself what you were choosing? Or were you just choosing not to be here?" Another long silence. When her mother spoke again, her voice was smaller, older. "Every day of my life, I've asked myself that every single day. What if you made the wrong choice? Then so did you, by following in my footsteps, and I'm sorry for that. I thought I was giving you freedom. Maybe I just gave you my fear instead." The honesty in her mother's voice cracked something open in Maya. "I'm thinking about staying. Not forever, maybe, but longer. I'm thinking about my ceremony, about my name, about who I am when I'm not pretending to be someone else." "Morning Dove." Her mother said the name like a prayer and a wound. "You were so beautiful that day, so peaceful in your little dress, not crying even once. I remember thinking you belonged here in a way I never did, and it scared me, because if you belonged here, where did that leave me?" "Mom, let me finish. I spent 24 years running from that place, and I'm tired, Maya. I'm so tired of running. But I don't know how to stop. I don't know how to go back. Maybe you don't have to go back, Maya said gently. Maybe you just have to stop running forward and see where you actually are. They talked for another hour, her mother sharing stories Maya had never heard. About her father, about her childhood, about the dreams she'd had before grief changed everything, about laughing water and who that girl had been before she decided to become someone else entirely. When they finally hung up, Maya felt both exhausted and lighter, as if some weight she'd been carrying without realizing it had finally been shared. That weekend, the community held a sweat lodge ceremony, and Thomas invited Maya to participate. She'd never done one before, and the prospect intimidated her, but something pulled her to say yes. The ceremony was intense, the heat almost unbearable at times, the darkness complete except for the glow of heated stones. In that space, stripped of all pretense and armor, Maya found herself speaking truths she'd never articulated even to herself, about feeling like an imposter in the corporate world, about the relief she'd felt when they took away her account, because it meant she could stop pretending it mattered, about the terror of being here, on the reservation, because what if she discovered she didn't belong here either? What if she was too damaged by her mother's choices, too disconnected, too late? It's never too late, Thomas's voice came through the darkness. The ancestors don't care about your resume. They don't care about your mistakes. They only care about your willingness to remember, to come home to yourself. In the heat and darkness, Maya felt something shift fundamentally inside her. Not a magical transformation, nothing supernatural or impossible, just a quiet recognition that she'd been holding her breath for years, waiting for permission to exhale. And that permission didn't need to come from anyone else. It could come from herself. After the ceremony, as they sat outside cooling down, drinking water, slowly returning to normal conversation, Maya felt different. Raw, yes. Vulnerable, absolutely. But also more solid, more present than she'd felt in years. Jennifer, Speaks with Thunder, sat down next to her. You did good in there. First one's always the hardest. Does it get easier? No, Jennifer said with a laugh. But you get stronger. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment before Jennifer spoke again. Can I tell you something? When I was applying to law school, I almost didn't put my tribal affiliation on the application. I thought it would make me seem less serious, less capable, like I'd gotten in on diversity points instead of merit. What changed your mind? My grandmother. She said, "You think your name is decoration. It's declaration. Speaks with thunder. You're supposed to make noise. You're supposed to make people uncomfortable. That's the whole point." Jennifer smiled. So I put it right at the top, and when I got in, I didn't wonder if I deserved it. I knew I did. Thunder Girl, remember? Maya found herself smiling back. Morning Dove. Brings peace to chaos. That's powerful too, you know. The world needs that. Maybe more than it needs thunder. As the sun set over the plains, Maya realized something profound. She'd spent years thinking she needed to choose corporate Maya or Morning Dove, white world or native identity, success or authenticity. But maybe the choice wasn't between them. Maybe the choice was whether to fragment herself or finally become whole. The morning of Emma's naming ceremony preparation was crisp and clear, the November sky so blue it almost hurt to look at. Maya had been on the reservation for 6 weeks now, and the rhythms of this life had become familiar, comfortable in a way her Chicago routine never had been. She'd made a decision, finally. Not to quit her job entirely. She wasn't ready for that, and she had student loans that weren't going to pay themselves. But she'd negotiated a remote work arrangement, agreeing to come to Chicago once a month for critical meetings, but otherwise working from South Dakota. Her boss had been surprisingly amenable, maybe recognizing that Maya had been burning out long before she'd admitted it to herself. But more than the logistics, Maya had made a deeper decision. She'd started introducing herself as Morning Dove, using her spirit name in community gatherings, letting people see her as who she actually was, rather than who she'd been trying to be. It felt awkward at first, like wearing a dress that didn't quite fit. But slowly, day by day, she grew into it, or maybe she simply remembered it had always fit perfectly. The preparation for Emma's ceremony was an all-hands effort. The women were finishing the beadwork on her dress, an intricate pattern of blue and white that had taken months to complete. The men were preparing the ceremonial space, a clearing near the river where ceremonies had been held for generations. Everyone had a role, everyone contributed. Even Maya, who a month ago couldn't thread a needle without stabbing herself, had been trusted with finishing some of the simpler beadwork. "You're getting good at this," Patricia observed, watching Maya's hands move more confidently across the fabric. "I had good teachers," Maya replied. Then, carefully, "Patricia, can I ask you something? When you chose to give Emma a traditional ceremony, were you worried about what it might mean for her future navigating between two worlds?" Patricia set down her own work, considering the question. "Every day. Of course I worry. The world out there isn't always kind to us, isn't always welcoming. Emma will face things I can't protect her from." She paused. "But I also learned something from watching my sister, your mother. She tried to protect herself by hiding who she was, and it didn't work. The pain found her anyway, but she faced it alone, without her people, without her name to anchor her. And you think the name will protect Emma? I think the name will remind her who she is when the world tries to tell her she's not enough. When they try to make her smaller, quieter, less herself." Patricia smiled sadly. "We can't stop our children from hurting, but we can give them tools to survive it, to come through it, still knowing themselves. The name is one of those tools." The conversation was interrupted by Emma herself, bursting through the door with her usual energy. "Is my dress ready? Can I see it? Can I try it on?" The women laughed, and Patricia pulled her daughter into a hug. "Almost ready. And yes, you can try it on, but carefully. One more bead to attach." As Emma carefully stepped into the dress, her excitement temporarily tempered by reverence for the garment, Maya felt her chest tighten with emotion. The little girl looked transformed, no longer just Emma, but someone stepping into a larger identity, a deeper belonging. "You look beautiful," Maya told her honestly. Emma beamed. "Do you think the elders have decided my name?" "They have," Sarah said from the doorway, having just arrived. "They met last night, but you won't know it until the ceremony. That's tradition." Emma's face was a mixture of excitement and impatience that only a 7-year-old could achieve. "But what if I don't like it?" "Names aren't about liking," Thomas Crow said, entering behind Sarah. "They're about truth, and truth is always beautiful, even when it's difficult." That evening, Maya found herself once again on Sarah's porch, but this time she wasn't alone. Her mother had arrived that afternoon, driving 8 hours from Milwaukee, looking nervous and out of place, but here nonetheless. "The house hasn't changed much," her mother said quietly, looking out at the same view Maya had been watching for weeks. "No," Sarah agreed. "Some things don't need to change. They're already exactly what they should be." The 3 generations sat together as the sun set, each lost in their own thoughts. Finally, Maya's mother spoke. "I ran from here because I thought staying would destroy me, because after Dad died, all I could see was loss and poverty and limitation." She turned to her own mother. "I'm sorry. I know I hurt you, hurt everyone." "You were hurt yourself," Sarah said simply. "Hurt people run. It's what they do." "But Maya," her mother's voice cracked. "I taught her to run too. Taught her that our heritage was something to escape from, not embrace. And now she's here finding what I threw away. And I don't know if I'm proud or heartbroken or both." Maya reached for her mother's hand. "You did what you thought you had to do. You gave me opportunities, education, choices. You gave me the tools to survive in that other world. I'm not rejecting that. I'm just adding this to it. Both worlds, both names, all of who I am. Can you do that? Really balance both?" "I don't know," Maya admitted, "but I'm going to try because I don't want to spend my life running from either side of myself. I want to be whole, even if it's messy and complicated and hard." Sarah stood, moving to embrace both her daughter and granddaughter. That's all any of us can do. Try to be whole. Try to remember. Try to carry the names we were given with honor, even when it would be easier to forget them. The next morning brought the final preparations. The clearing by the river had been transformed, prayer flags in the traditional colors marking the 4 directions, a central fire pit ready for lighting, circles of stones creating a sacred space. People from across the reservation and beyond were arriving, elders in traditional dress, families with children, young adults who'd grown up with Emma. Maya helped set up chairs, greeting people she now recognized, feeling the strange comfort of being part of something larger than herself. She saw Jennifer, Speaks with Thunder, now home from law school for the ceremony, saw Marcus, who had decided to go through with his own naming ceremony next spring, saw Doris and the other elder women who'd taught her to bead, to listen, to remember. And she saw her mother, standing awkwardly on the edge of the gathering, clearly uncertain of her welcome after so many years away. Maya watched as Sarah approached her daughter, saw them speak briefly, saw her mother's shoulders relax just slightly. "Come on," Sarah said loudly enough for others to hear. "Your daughter is being named today. You should stand with the family." It was a public declaration of belonging, of forgiveness, of coming home. Maya saw her mother's eyes fill with tears as others from the community approached, welcoming her back not with resentment, but with acceptance. Thomas Crow approached Maya. "Big day. For Emma, yes, but also for you, I think." "Why for me?" "Because you're witnessing what names do, how they bind us to each other, to our history, to our future, how they make us accountable not just to ourselves, but to our community." He smiled. "And because I heard you're using yours now. Morning dove. Finally flying with your own wings." "Doves don't fly that much," Maya pointed out. "They mostly stay close to home." "Exactly," Thomas said, his eyes twinkling. "That's the whole point." As the sun climbed higher, the ceremony time approached, and Maya felt a sense of peace she'd never experienced in any corporate achievement, any professional milestone. This belonging, this connection, this acknowledgement of who she truly was, this was what she'd been searching for all along, without even knowing it. The ceremony began with the lighting of the sacred fire. Thomas Crow speaking the prayers that had been spoken for generations, connecting this moment to all the moments that had come before and all that would follow. The smoke rose straight up into the clear November sky, as if carrying messages to the ancestors. Emma stood in her beaded dress, small but radiant, her parents on either side of her. The community formed a circle around them, and Maya found herself standing between her grandmother and her mother, 3 generations united in this moment of witnessing. Thomas spoke about the tradition of naming, about how it connected the child to the land, to the people, to the great web of relationships that made up the world. He spoke about responsibility and gift, about how every name carried both. Then the elders stepped forward, 4 of them, each speaking about Emma as they had observed her over the 7 years of her life. They spoke of her curiosity, her kindness, her fierce protection of smaller children, her love of animals. They spoke of how she asked questions constantly, never satisfied with simple answers, always digging deeper. They spoke of her laughter, infectious and free, able to transform the mood of a room. Finally, Thomas turned to Emma. "The elders have chosen your name through observation and prayer, through consultation and confirmation. This name is not who we want you to be. It is who you already are, who you have always been, seen clearly by those who love you." He paused, letting the significance of the moment build. "Your name is asks for truth." The community responded with affirmations, voices overlapping in approval and recognition. Emma looked up at Thomas, processing the name, and slowly a smile spread across her face. "Because I ask a lot of questions?" she asked, perfectly demonstrating her name. The gathering laughed, and Thomas nodded. "Because you are not satisfied with surfaces. Because you seek understanding, not just answers. Because you will be someone who holds others accountable to honesty, including yourself. This is your gift to the people. This is your path." The ceremony continued with blessings, with the giving of traditional gifts, with Emma walking the circle to be greeted by each person present, each one acknowledging her new name, welcoming her into her fuller identity. When Emma reached Maya, the little girl hugged her tightly. "I like my name," she whispered. I know, Maya whispered back, and you'll grow into it more and more every year. Like you're growing into Mourning Dove? Maya felt tears spring to her eyes. Yes, exactly like that. As the formal ceremony concluded, and the gathering shifted into celebration, food being shared, stories being told, children playing, Maya found herself in conversation with Thomas Crow once more. I've been thinking, she said, about my work, the consulting I do. I help companies with change management, with helping people adapt to new systems and structures. And I wonder if I've been approaching it wrong. I've been treating people like problems to solve, resistance to overcome. But what if they're like me? What if they need to be seen, truly seen before they can change? What if the name, the identity, has to come before the transformation, not after? Thomas smiled broadly. Now you're understanding. Names aren't destinations. They're starting points. They tell us where to begin, not where to end. I want to bring this back, Maya said, the idea forming as she spoke. Not the ceremony itself, that's sacred, that's ours, but the principle. The idea that real change starts with being seen, with being known, with having your true self acknowledged and valued. That's ambitious. The corporate world doesn't usually value such things. No, Maya agreed, but maybe that's why it's broken. Maybe that's why people like me end up burning out, feeling like imposters, never quite belonging anywhere. She looked across the gathering, seeing her mother talking animatedly with Patricia, years of distance dissolving in shared laughter, seeing Sarah surrounded by children, telling stories that would become part of their own identity formation, seeing Emma asks for truth, already living into her name by interrogating everyone about the different foods being served. I don't have to choose, Maya said quietly. Between this world and that one, between Mourning Dove and corporate consultant. I can be both. I can bring the wisdom of one into the other. Yes, Thomas said simply. That is exactly what you must do. That is what your name calls you to. Mourning Dove, bringing peace, creating home wherever you are. That includes in conference rooms and corporate offices, not just on reservations. As the afternoon wore into evening, fires were lit against the growing cold, and people settled into the comfortable rhythm of community celebration. Maya found herself telling stories about her Chicago life to a group of teenagers, but framing them differently now, not as achievements to aspire to, but as lessons learned, mistakes made, and wisdom gained. So what made you come back? One of them asked. Maya thought about it. I lost a job I thought defined me, and in losing it, I found something more important. I found my name, my real name, and once I remembered who I actually was, I couldn't pretend to be someone else anymore. That's brave, Jennifer Speaks with Thunder observed. Letting go of what you thought you wanted to find out what you actually needed. Or maybe it's just being too tired to keep running, Maya said with a laugh. Her mother approached, hesitant but determined. Can we talk? Just for a minute. They walked to the edge of the gathering, still within sight of the fires but far enough for privacy. Her mother took a deep breath. I want to apologize, really apologize, not just say the words. I spent your whole childhood teaching you to be ashamed of this, to hide it, to treat it like a liability instead of a gift. She gestured at the ceremony, the people, the traditions. I robbed you of this, of them, of yourself. Mom, let me finish. I did it because I was scared and hurt and angry, but that's not an excuse. And seeing you here, seeing you use your name, seeing you belong in a way I never let myself belong. Her voice cracked. I'm so proud of you, and so sorry I made it harder than it had to be. Maya pulled her mother into a hug. You also gave me tools I needed. Education, confidence, the ability to navigate that other world. I needed both, this and that. Who you taught me to be and who I actually am. They're not opposites, they're both me. Can I? Her mother hesitated. Can I start over? Not go back. I can't go back. But start from here. Try to reconnect, try to remember who Laughing Water was before I decided she needed to disappear. I think that's exactly what you should do. What we both should do. Start from where we are and build from here. Sarah joined them, seeming to sense the moment of reconciliation. She pulled both her daughter and granddaughter close. 3 generations, 3 names, 3 paths, but one family, one circle. As darkness fell completely, and the stars emerged with the crystalline clarity only possible far from city lights, the gathering continued. Stories were told, songs were sung, and Maya felt herself relax into belonging in a way she'd never experienced before. She thought about the corporate life waiting for her back in Chicago, the remote work she'd be doing from here, the ways she'd have to navigate between these 2 worlds. It wouldn't be easy. There would be conference calls at odd hours, deadlines that conflicted with community obligations, moments when neither world fully understood the other. But she also knew, with a certainty that settled deep in her bones, that she was finally on the right path, not the easiest path, not the most clearly marked path, but the truest path. The path that honored both her heritage and her choices, both Mourning Dove and Maya Redfeather, both the reservation and the wider world. Thomas Crow approached once more, this time with a small wrapped bundle. "For you," he said simply. Maya unwrapped it to find a beaded bracelet, the pattern showing a dove in blue and white beads against a sunrise background. "From the women's circle," Thomas explained. "They wanted you to have something to carry with you, a reminder for when you're in that other world of who you are in this one." Maya felt tears streaming down her face, overwhelmed by the gesture, by the acceptance, by the love of this community that had held space for her even when she'd been running from it. "Thank you," she managed. "Thank you for not giving up on me. On us." She gestured to her mother. "Thank you for holding our names even when we forgot them." "Names aren't ours to give up," Thomas said gently. "They exist whether we use them or not. We just help people remember them, help people find their way home to themselves." As the ceremony celebration wound down, people began to depart, calling goodbyes and blessings, making plans for the next gathering, the next ceremony, the ongoing life of the community. Maya stood with her grandmother and mother, watching Emma, now officially asks for truth, playing with other children by the dying fire. "She'll be okay," Sarah said softly. "She has her name, she has her people, she has her foundation. Whatever comes, she'll know who she is." "I wish I'd had that," Maya's mother said. "I wish I'd held on to Laughing Water instead of running from her." "You can have it now," Sarah replied. "Names don't expire. They just wait, waiting for us to be ready to claim them again." Maya thought about that, about names waiting, patient and persistent, for the people who carried them to finally come home to themselves. About how her name, Mourning Dove, had been there all along, whispering truth she'd been too afraid to hear. "I'm going to do something," Maya said suddenly. "I'm going to propose a new program at my company. Training managers in authentic leadership, in seeing their teams as whole people with identities and stories and names that matter. I'm going to bring this wisdom into that world, whatever form it needs to take." "That's good work," Thomas said, having overheard. "Important work. The world needs bridges between wisdom traditions and modern systems, needs people who can walk in both worlds without losing themselves." "Mourning Dove work," Maya said with a smile. "Bringing peace, creating home, even in conference rooms." As they drove back to Sarah's house that night, Maya in the passenger seat of her grandmother's old truck, her mother following behind in her own car, Maya felt something she hadn't felt in years. Wholeness, not perfection. Not the absence of conflict or confusion, but wholeness. All the pieces of herself finally acknowledged, finally integrated, finally allowed to coexist. She touched the beaded bracelet on her wrist, feeling the care and skill that had gone into each stitch, each bead placed with intention and love. This was what she'd been missing in her corporate life. Not the specific techniques or traditions, but this, being known, being seen, being valued for who she actually was, rather than what she could produce. Her phone buzzed with an email from Derek. "Heard you're coming back part-time. Good. We need you. The new team could use your instinct for reading people." Maya smiled. Her instinct for reading people. What he didn't know was that she'd been learning a whole new way of seeing people, of understanding them not as resources or problems, but as complex human beings carrying names and stories and identities that shaped everything they did. She typed back, "Looking forward to it. I'm bringing some new approaches. Think you'll find them interesting." That night, Lying in bed in her grandmother's guest room, Maya thought about Emma, asks for truth, and the journey ahead of her. The little girl would face challenges, no question. Racism, poverty, the legacy of historical trauma that hung over the reservation like a persistent fog. But she would face them knowing who she was, anchored by her name, held by her community. And Maya would face her own challenges, navigating corporate politics as an openly Indigenous woman, balancing two worlds that didn't always understand each other, finding ways to bring wisdom from one sphere into the other. But she would do it as Mourning Dove, bringing peace, creating home, being exactly who she'd always been, underneath all the armor and pretense. Through the window, she could see the same stars her ancestors had seen, the same moon that had witnessed countless naming ceremonies across generations. She thought about all the mourning doves who had come before her, carrying that name through their own challenges, their own journeys. She wasn't alone. She'd never been alone. She'd just forgotten to look for her people. But she remembered now. And remembering, she could finally rest. Check if you're already subscribed to this channel, because these stories of identity, heritage, and the power of knowing who you really are will continue to transform how you see yourself in the world. If you watch this far, it's because you recognize something true in Maya's journey, in Emma's ceremony, in the power of naming and being named. Leave a comment saying, "I watched this far," so I can get to know you and know who really values these deep stories of human connection and cultural wisdom. Hit that like button if this story touched you, and share it with someone who needs to remember their own name, their own truth, their own path home to themselves. These stories matter. Your story matters. And together, we remember what it means to be fully, authentically, courageously ourselves.